American Top 40.
It's our weekly hit ride up the Billboard chart.
Number 27.
Down to Green Day.
Do you have the time to listen to me whine?
Mike Dirnt and Billie Jo of Green Day have been friends since they were 10 years old, growing up in the Northern California town of Rodeo. Their band slips a couple of notches to number 27 with Basket Case.
Casey Kasem down.
Well, now we're up to When I Come Around. It's by an alternative rock band that got its start touring in an old converted bookmobile. A bookmobile driven by their drummer's father.
Don't want to be an American idiot. Don't want a nation under the new media. Hey, can you hear the sound of hysteria? The subliminal mind. America.
The group called Green Day was born in the small town of Rodeo, California, when Mike Dirnt and Billie Joe Armstrong got together with a drummer named Frank Wright III. Both Mike and Billie Jo had grown up in difficult circumstances, where money was always a problem. But Frank Wright, who uses the name Trey Cool, came from a close middle-class family. Trey Cool's parents were very supportive of his desire to be a musician, and they helped him in whatever way they could. In 1992, when Trey, Mike, and Billie Jo wanted to go out on tour, Trey's father offered to help make the band's life on the road a bit more pleasant and safer. He bought a used bookmobile from the Phoenix, Arizona library system. Then he completely rebuilt the inside, adding racks for the guitars, drums, and amps, and bunk beds for everyone to sleep in. And when the renovations were complete, Trey's dad got behind the wheel and drove the three young rockers on their tour himself. That way, no matter how wild they got on stage, he knew they'd have a good, sober driver. These days, the band Green Day travels in a bit more luxury because they're one of the hottest alternative bands around, thanks to memorable performances like their one at Woodstock last year, and also thanks to the popularity of their 8 million selling CD, Dookie. This week, a track from that CD moves back up a notch to number 16 on Casey's Top 40. Here's Green Day and When I Come Around.
Casey's Top 40.
Across the USA and around the world, you can hear Casey's Top 40 every week on great radio stations like Kansas City's #1 hit music station, Mix 93.3, Kansas City, Missouri. Now we're up to the latest hit for a band whose bass player's life was so tough. At the age of 16, he was living alone in a run-down truck, going to school by day and cleaning fish by night. Mike Dirnt of the band called Green Day grew up in the oil refinery town of Rodeo, California, on the edge of the San Francisco Bay. He says his parents were divorced when he was just 7 years old, and he remembers that life was never easy for his mother after that. She worked as a waitress, and in Mike's words, quote, she was always counting tips out of a jar to pay rent. When Mike was in his teens, his mother got a job offer in Washington State and told her son they had to move there. But Mike didn't want to move. He wanted to stay where he was, playing the rock music that had become the most important thing in his life. And so he got an after-school job in a seafood restaurant, cleaning fish all evening long. After living in a number of spare rooms, he wound up pretty much homeless, and his home was a broken-down truck where he'd sleep in the back after finishing a long night at his restaurant job. Mike says it was pretty bad. Quote, after work, I'd do my homework by the light in the back of the truck. The next day, I'd go to school smelling like fish. Unquote. His one way out was music. And it was music that saved him, playing hundreds of shows every year in grungy clubs and bars until his band finally hit. And when they hit big, selling over 9 million copies of their debut album called Dookie. Recently, they released their third CD, Nimrod. This week, Mike Dirnt and Green Day climbed 2 notches to number 15 on Casey's Top 40 with a hit from that CD, Time of Your Life. Good riddance.
Another turn.
Casey's Top 40.
I'm Casey Kasem. Now we're up to the latest hit for a band with a hard-edged, out-of-control persona. But offstage, in real life, the punk rockers are proud papas. The trio called Green Day has built their career around their wild on-stage antics, which include getting into a huge mud fight at Woodstock 94 and taking off their clothing during a show in New York City. The image they project is high energy and anything goes, the long-established punk rock credo of battling the world. But, as it turns out, their image is just part of the story. The owner of a Berkeley, California nightclub where they used to play before they became famous described Green Day as, quote, a bunch of nice guys, always polite, who never kick holes in the walls, unquote. And when it comes to their current personal lives, not only are they well-behaved, they're downright normal. All three members of Green Day have kids. Trey has a daughter named Ramona. Billie Joe Armstrong has a son named Joey. And Mike has a daughter named Estelle Desiree. According to Trey's mother, having a daughter is the happiest thing that's ever happened to her son. She says, when she was born, Trey held her in his arms all night. Every time she looked at him, he'd say, "See? We're bonding." This week, the band that's wild on stage but mild in real life climbs a notch to number 13 on Casey's Top 40. Here's Green Day with Time of Your Life, Good Riddance.
America's Top
5 years ago this week, one of the top hits in the USA was by a band who once traveled 200 miles to do an audition, only to find no audience and no electricity. It was back in 1989 that the trio called Green Day got what they thought was their big break, an audition for Lookout Records at a club near the label's headquarters in Mendocino, California. That was 200 miles away, but the band didn't mind. This was it. They loaded up their van and drove for 5 hours through a driving rainstorm. A rainstorm that didn't just flood the roads, it flooded the club as well. It was filled with water. The electricity was out. And of course, there was no audience. But that didn't stop Green Day. Using a portable generator the head of the record company owned, they managed to plug in their instruments and put on a show for the label. A show that landed them a contract. A contract that led to one of the top hits in the USA 5 years ago this week. Here's Green Day with Basket Case.
Do you have the time?
Number 5.
Standing pat is Green Day, a band whose lead singer, Billie Joe Armstrong, was asked about his unusual accent. He responded that, quote, I sound like an Englishman impersonating an American impersonating an Englishman. Here's Green Day with Boulevard of Broken Dreams.
I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known.
American Top 20.
Well, now we're up to an American Top 20 Extra by Green Day, a band whose leader has an unexpected role model. Billie Joe Armstrong says, lots of people have influenced me. There's Bono, he's the number 1 on my list, but there's also Otis Redding, Elvis Presley, John Lennon, Joe Strummer, Bob Marley, and Bob Dylan. But his biggest role model isn't a person. It's a submarine. Quote, they say a submarine never goes in reverse, and when I don't know where I'm going, I think about that. I think about life being like a submarine. I've got to move forward or I'll be completely stuck. And using that model, Billie Joe has come up with rules that run his life. They're never rest, keep learning, and always look for a new way. Rules that have made him a star. Now, here's Billie Joe and his band Green Day with an extra from 1998, Time of Your Life.